Welcome to Conquering Your Clownfish, a podcast dedicated to transforming disabilities into special abilities. I'm your host, Brady Murray. Welcome to today's show. This is a special episode. As many of you know, I run two podcasts, the See the Miracle podcast and the Conquering Your Clownfish podcast. Today's guest is a perfect guest for both podcasts, so we're getting a 2-for-1 in this one. Allow me to introduce our guest. I am so excited to introduce our special guest today, Mandy Breitenstein. Mandy is a wife of 17 years and mother of 5, soon to be 6 via adoption. She lives in Salem, Oregon, and owns and operates a private Christian school that is fully inclusive. Everyone and every ability is welcome. She first adopted during the pandemic, finally getting the green light to pick up their daughter in November of 2020. Now they are waiting for that green light to travel once again back to Armenia to adopt a little girl that they have longed to bring home since she was 3 years old. Mandy, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Brady. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am way excited to have you here. This is going to be a very fun episode. There's so much that we have in common and things that both of us are very, very passionate about. This will be a lot of fun to visit with you.
I'm excited.
So, man, where do we begin? My heart always takes me to the adoption side, so I actually would love to start there, particularly because of Armenia and a personal connection that I have to Armenia as well. Let's start with that. What was the initial draw to Armenia?
You know, when I grew up with an aunt who was Armenian, so California, big population of Armenians, the largest population outside of Armenia in California. And my aunt was Armenian. She married my uncle. So by marriage, I just had this incredible Armenian aunt growing up. And that was our first introduction to the culture. And just, you know, the Armenian people are incredible and they're so family oriented and so loving. And so there was always a special connection there. And when we were kind of led down the adoption trajectory, when God kind of laid that on our hearts, we knew we were going to look at special needs adoption. Down syndrome was something that we were excited and passionate about pursuing. And when we found out that Armenia was a country that we could adopt from, that just felt like it was meant to be. So that's kind of where it came from, and we are just so grateful that God took us to Armenia, and now Armenia is just part of the fabric of our family in so many ways.
Well, that is awesome. I actually was not aware of that. That is a very personal connection for you.
Yeah.
And so talk to me about the special needs side. And so your heart was led to adoption, but as well as special needs, and in this case, Down syndrome. How did that come about?
You know, that story is a total God thing. Probably a decade before we ever stepped into adoption, I was part of a mom's group at our church. And one day there was a speaker and she spoke about their adoption of a little girl with Down syndrome from Russia. And I was just captivated as she talked about, you know, their family and how God had just grown this desire in their heart and the story of how they went to Russia and brought her home. And then she shared so much about her daughter. And I feel like that was the moment that God just kind of like captured my heart. And it would be a full decade before we stepped into adoption. But from that moment on, I just knew that this was going to be part of our story. And
I was going to say, how was it for Adam? I mean, that's a very powerful personal experience for you, but how was that for Adam?
Yeah, I think that's an important question because so often in adoption, I have people ask me all the time, well, I want to adopt, but my husband's not on board. And I think, you know, that happens a lot. When I first told Adam, hey, you know, I feel like God's calling us to adopt, and I feel like he's calling us to adopt internationally with special needs. He was like, really? Do you feel that? And, you know, it was, what's important in adoption is, you know, you do want to be united with your spouse. This is a story you walk through together. And like I said, it took us a full decade before God had us in this place where both of our hearts united. And he grew our family in lots of different ways over that time. When I had that first encounter, I had one little boy who was a baby, and by the time we adopted, we had four. So
Wow.
God, grew our family in that time, and over that time, He worked in Adam's heart. And when we adopted, Adam was excited and he was impassioned for this step we were taking together. And now, as we look back, 10 years before Ember wasn't the time for us to adopt because it was always Ember. It was always Ember that was going to be part of our family. So I would say, Adam at first thought I was a little crazy. It's kind of a crazy thing to bring home. But as time went on, God worked in his heart too. And when we stepped out in adoption, we were just so united as a couple and as a family. Our whole family was excited. And now we're doing it again. And we're so excited.
Back to Armenia.
Yep. Yeah.
So the first time was amazing. It worked out well. It sounds like Ember's doing fantastic. She's 5 now.
She's going to be 6 next week.
6.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. And so everything has worked out very well.
Yeah.
And your heart is calling you back to Armenia.
Yeah.
Share with us what you feel is similar to this experience and also what is different about this experience for you.
Yeah. Well, I think the biggest difference is we stepped into adoption. We started in 2019. When we were matched with Ember, it was January 2020 that we took our first trip there. Wow. Right ahead of everything that we had no idea was coming in the world. So we were in Armenia, and I remember we got off the plane, and they had their hazmat suits on, and we're thinking, what is going on here? But that whole process was so different because of COVID that this, in many ways, feels like an entirely new process because it's very different in terms of what's happening in the world around us. So that's the biggest difference. I would say what's similar is just our excitement and our longing, even more so this time because we know the joy that's coming. We know, we've walked through it before, and we know what we're walking towards. This little girl is so wanted and so loved, and we cannot wait to bring her home. And there's a whole life waiting for her here, which is exciting.
Yeah, most definitely. She is very lucky, and you are all very, very lucky as well. Your heart has been really drawn towards special needs, so much so that you have started an all-inclusive school.
Yeah.
Can you share with us about what this school is and how this all came about?
Yeah. So when we came home, a year or the summer after we brought Ember home, we wanted to start her in preschool. And, our family, our faith is foundational for who we are. And so we wanted a Christian-based schooling for her. And unfortunately, there just weren't any schools in our local community that would even give her an interview or even entertain admission because of her Down syndrome diagnosis. And for me, that just really broke my heart because I truly believe that we cannot experience the beauty of the body of Christ if any members are excluded for any reason. And so it was just, we were passionate that we could never send our kids to a school where their youngest sister wouldn't be accepted. And so, through that, God just kind of stirred a crazy idea in my heart. My background is education. I've been a teacher for 18 years now.
Okay.
And so in 2021, I left the public school where I had been teaching and I started a school. And at the time it was 8 families, 16 kids. And God has grown that beyond our wildest dreams. And today we have 150 kids from preschool all the way through 8th grade. We are fully inclusive. So we include all abilities. This year we have 7 kids with Down syndrome.
Wow.
Ember is fully included in her kindergarten class. She is with her peers. We piloted a new program. We call it CARE, so Cultivating Academics, Redeeming Education, and that's a program that exists inside of our buildings to support kids that might have different needs or need additional support, and we do that for them inside our school building. This year we launched a new program. It's called Mission 127, and it's founded in the biblical idea of Genesis 127, that we're image bearers of God, and that we should be moving towards the hard places and the unseen people. And so Mission 127 provides all kinds of early intervention support to kids free of charge. And so we provide that to our community. And we're just really excited about what God has done. He gets all the glory. It's nothing that we've done. He has grown it. And we are so excited just to be walking with him through this journey.
Mandy, this is inspiring. This is incredible. I mean, just in a very short period of time, you traveled across the world during the pandemic. You adopted a child that has a special need, has Down syndrome. Now you've created a school for children that have of all abilities, let's say, and you've grown that to 150 kids in just like 24, 36 months. And now you're going back to Armenia to adopt another child that has Down syndrome. I just love your energy and I love what you're doing. This is inspiring. So I mean, my mind immediately goes to, okay, what's next? what do you feel on your heart when obviously we have this adoption that I would expect you're hoping to have that complete by the end of this year, right? And then being able to continue in the school. But what else is on your heart right now? If you could give us an insider view.
Yeah. It's so interesting. That's such a loaded question, right? Because if you had asked me that 5 years ago, I would not have said here because that, right? It's just, God takes us in such places we never anticipated when, you're just listening to the working of the Spirit. And so I couldn't even begin to tell you what's next. I do know that what I am passionate about now is what we're talking about, orphan care, and seeing the people who are unseen, and moving towards the hard places and being willing to be part of the solution and not just recognize the problem. Because if we aren't willing to step into a problem, we can't ever find a solution. And so I think my biggest passion as I look at the future of my family and the little girls that are going to be part of my family, I want them to see their inherent worth as image bearers of the King. I want the world to see my little girls for who they are, and not what they can or cannot do, because that's just a small piece of my little girls that I love. And I think that if we can shift that narrative and we can encourage people to really see each other, that's the kind of thing that changes the world.
Yeah. Here's a suggestion. You need to start a podcast. You rock. You are good. You are really, really good at being able to inspire the heart. I want to ask you, you had mentioned something that I think is a common thread with our listeners and with our guests. And that is, and it's described in many different ways, but how you had described it was, in essence, the Spirit was speaking to your heart. And there's a pattern that has transpired here. My guess is it goes way, way back. I mean, even before the last 10 years. But there's a pattern that we've seen multiple examples with the school, with adoption again. Can you describe what that feeling is for you and how that has led you and been a guide in your life?
Yeah. I think what's pivotal and most important in this conversation is just what you said. My faith is the foundation of my life, and my relationship with God is my light post in the storm. It's how I make decisions. And I think when you are in relationship with God and you spend time in the Word and you get to know who God is and who He says He is based on what He has told us through the Bible, it's just like in a relationship. When you get to know someone well, there is a deeper connection. And when you understand that connection, it just makes those little nudges of the Spirit easier to take that step in obedience. When you are used to hearing it in the big things, those small nudges become easier. My husband always says I'm a cliff jumper, in the sense that, I will always jump off that cliff if I feel that's where I'm being called, and I'm going to trust the landing. And I think that is kind of how we can describe the Holy Spirit. I'm comfortable jumping off the cliff because I trust who's at the bottom. I know that the foundation of my life is Christ, and I'm willing to step out. Sometimes that yes is hesitant. Like, it can be a whispered, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm scared, but I'm going to do it because I trust the one who holds me ultimately. And I think that's the best way I can describe it. That's how my husband describes it. I'm just a cliff jumper.
That's beautiful. How would you describe Adam? Is he a cliff jumper as well?
He is, but at the same time, he's gonna hold my hand as we're jumping, and that's good. Like we are a good match because he's always the one who wants to have the conversations, who wants to slow down and make sure we're praying about it as a couple, and that's important too. And I feel like God has just blessed me tremendously with a man who leads our family so well, who walks alongside me, who's not afraid to jump with me, but also reminds me, let's take time as a couple and as a family and prayerfully consider where God's calling us.
Yeah. I joke that I am a recovering quick start or a recovering cliff jumper, as I think you could
Yes.
describe this. And I joke with Andrea, when you know, you know. And
Yeah.
like, when you know, like it's time to go. And Andrea has been such a amazing balance for me as well to help me
Yes.
to also be willing to jump when we know, but also helping me to measure twice and to be able
Yes.
to track the wind as well and ponder this, sleep on this, and then we can go ahead and do it. So
Yes.
that's been a fun thing.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you always had this conviction towards your faith? Has this gone from your childhood? Is this an inherent part of who you are, or
Yeah.
has that evolved?
Yeah, it definitely has evolved. I was born into a Christian family, and so from a young age, faith was always part of my story. I would say that really my faith became my own as a young adult. Adam and I got married, and we actually walked through a lot of years of infertility.
Wow.
And it was during that time that Adam and I really had to, we had to ask ourselves the question, if we don't get what we want, like if we never are able to have kids, is God still good? And that's a pivotal moment in your faith when you're encountering this wall of, but this isn't going how I thought it was going to go. Even in the face of that, do I still believe that God is good? And that was a big moment in our faith where it became my own, because what I realized is, yeah, God is still good. Circumstances do not define his goodness. He is good in the valley. He is good on the mountaintop. And in all of those seasons, I have been so blessed to walk with God. He has held my hand. Things haven't always gone my way. And it was a very hard season in our early 20s. We weren't able to start our family. And I mean, I look back now, and I see how God used those seasons, which I thought were torturous at the time, but he used them to prepare me for a future that I'm now standing in.
Yeah.
And so looking back, I can see God's hand on all of it. And what I see is a good God who is good in all circumstances.
Yeah. It would be fair to say that you were entrusted with those life experiences in those
Yes.
early 20s.
Yeah.
And that you have been a tremendous steward of those experiences in taking those experiences that you were entrusted with and really paying it forward. Here in a couple of weeks, our Rod's Heroes team is traveling to Armenia. And we've been preparing for this for almost a year now. And the big day is finally here. And so we will be traveling there. We are going to have a See Their Light event that is going to be in Gyumri. We'll have over 200 families and individuals, kids that have disabilities that are in Armenia. And we also, as part of this trip, are going to be advocating and seeking to find families for 34 children that have Down syndrome in Armenia. And so my heart is just so heavy for these children, because I've been in these orphanages and I've seen firsthand what a life without a family looks like for a child that is naturally very innocent and very pure in spirit and in heart. Mandy, I would love to hear your feelings for those listeners that are tuning in that may feel something on their heart about adoption. And not just adoption, but in particular about adopting from Armenia and adopting a child that has Down syndrome.
Yeah. What I said earlier is true. When we first considered going to Armenia, and I'll first talk about the country, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about the full breadth of that question. I had no idea what to expect. I couldn't even probably pinpoint it on a map for you back in 2019. I mean, I had an aunt that was Armenian, but the country is so small. Most people don't know it exists. But what I can say now on the other side of that, Armenia is unlike any country, any culture I've ever experienced. The people there are incredible. The country is so safe. Children are revered. We brought all of our kids. Our children were honored guests everywhere we went. It's just this incredible culture, and we have been just enveloped by this incredible Armenian community that truly loves our family, has adopted us into the fabric of their Armenian culture. They are proud of their culture, and they should be. It's an incredible, incredible cultural history that they have. So about the country specifically, it's a beautiful place to adopt. I can't imagine giving it a higher recommendation in terms of a destination where you can bring your family and experience that incredible culture. So we've loved that. In terms of the adoption piece, what I often tell people who say, I kind of feel like maybe we should adopt, but I'm scared about this, and this. My advice is always do it scared. It's what we're doing here when we choose to love a child, any child, biological, adopted, any child. It's brave love. And brave love, choosing to love the child today. None of us know what tomorrow will bring for any of our kids, but we choose unconditionally to love our kids bravely in spite of that, because all kids deserve that brave love. And so that's my advice to everyone when I get asked that question, because there's this feeling that adoption is like for those people with, this huge faith or this huge financial backing or whatever it is. But that is a lie. Adoption is for all of us. And adoption, where God calls us, he equips us. He doesn't call the equipped. None of us are equipped to be parents of any kind until we are. And then God equips us in incredible ways. And so my advice is do it scared and just recognize that all that's required is that same brave love that we step into every single day with our spouses, with our friends, with our kids. We love not expecting anything in return, not knowing what the future will hold. We love because love is worth it. It's always worth it. So that would be my advice, just to do it scared.
I think that is great advice. And I may borrow that phrase from you because that is so fitting for adoption.
Yes.
And being able to be willing to do it scared and just have that courage to be able to step into it.
Yes.
I want to echo the sentiments that you shared about Armenia as a country. We, with Rod's Heroes specifically, I think we've been to 5 countries now to be able to advocate for those children and to be able to spend time in those countries to help families that are adopting. And there is no country that is like Armenia.
There's really not.
It's hard to put into words how kind the people were there, but how safe I felt as well. And so you think traveling to Eastern Europe, like, you got to be careful, and you should be careful. But there was something about Armenia that was so family friendly and so culturally rich, and a people that have 100% embraced their culture and just love their culture. And so that is a huge advantage of this particular process of adoption.
Yes, and I would say, we brought our whole family. At that time, Charlie, or right above Ember, she was just barely 3, and we took her to Armenia for a full month, took the whole family, because we really thought, Ember was 2. We knew that she wouldn't remember. She wouldn't have these memories, but we wanted her siblings to be her memory keepers, to be able to tell her about the time we came across the world to bring her home. So we took the whole family, and the only downside was that they couldn't come to court with us when we went to actually make it official. And I was panicked because I'm like, well, what are we going to do? We didn't have the kids weren't old enough to watch themselves. And our translator, who was incredible, he found us a babysitter, and he said, oh, she's amazing. And I remember looking at Adam and I was like, are we going to do this? Like, we don't know these people. We're just going to leave our kids. But it truly, I wouldn't do that here, but in Armenia, Armenia, it's a very different sense of culture. And these kids the children are revered. They are so honored in that culture. And our kids had the best time with this Armenian babysitter. She taught them Armenian words, made some food for them. It was incredible. So
that's a whole nother story with the food that's over there as well. Is pretty unique.
Yes.
I'm curious, did you have opportunities to be able to go and do a traditional Armenian dinner where it's about 4 hours on average, and that includes dancing and multiple toasts? When I say toasts, I'm talking like 20 plus toasts. Like, that's a very integral part of it. Did you ever get to experience that when you were there?
We didn't do the full dinner, mostly because we had our children, and I don't know that they could have done it. But we did do a lot of the food, like the kebabs and the lavash, all that delicious, amazing Armenian food. My oldest son, he's 13 now. He is an incredible cook. He loves to cook, and he's done a lot of traditional Armenian meals that we first had there.
So cool.
It's delicious. They have a very delicious cuisine.
Yeah, beautiful. So in the few minutes that we have left, we haven't had a chance for you to talk much about all of your children.
Yeah.
We would love to get to know your children.
Okay. Yeah, so we have Blake, he's my oldest, he's 13, and so he's a 7th grader, and he's just the most incredible big brother. The relationship that Blake has with Ember is one of my favorite things to witness. He is so sweet and protective of her, which is one thing we prayed for. We wanted our kids to be incredibly close, even though they didn't get to share the first 2 years of her life with her, and that God has answered that tenfold, which is incredible to see. After Blake, we have Lainey. She's 11. She is a 6th grader this year, so 2 middle schoolers, and she is just the best big sister. I would describe her as incredibly loving and compassionate, and she just has empathy for days. Adoption is on her heart. If you asked her, she'd tell you she's going to grow up and adopt. She wants to start an adoption agency. Like, this is what we prayed for. We want our kids to, have their hearts broken by the things that break the heart of our Father.
Yeah.
And she is just passionate about orphan care, and she can't wait to go back to Armenia. So she's really excited. Then we have our son, Tucker. He's 8. His name, Tucker, means all heart, and I would describe him just like that. He is so kind and loving and thoughtful, and I am continually in awe of these incredible little people that God has entrusted us with. After Tucker's Charlie, she was the one who was 3, and now she's about to be 7. So time has passed, and no one in the world loves Ember the way Charlie does. She loves her so intensely, and they're almost exactly a year apart. So Ember's birthday is next week. Charlie's birthday is 2 days later. So they're very close in age, just 1 year apart. And Charlie is just energy and enthusiasm and just love, like love as a verb. She just is so excited about life. And then our sweet Ember, she is about to be 6, and she's in kindergarten. And Ember is just joy personified, truly. She has such a big personality, which is so fun to see her come into that. She loves her big siblings so passionately. Her love right now is Peppa Pig. Obsessed with it.
Of course.
Yes. And there's one episode she loves. It's called Hiccups. And so she'll go around the house repeating line for line this episode where the little guy hiccuping, Charles or something, I don't know his name. And she'll just go hiccup, hiccup, constantly over and over. And then she'll laugh and she'll say, "I'm so funny." And she is. She has the best sense of humor. It's just so fun to see her confident in herself and who she is, and her little personality is just, it's been so fun to watch. So our children are the crown jewels in this life, and we love them so, so dearly, and we're so blessed that God has entrusted us with each one of them. They
sound absolutely delightful, and what a blessing they'll be to their new sibling, and what a blessing that sibling will be for them as well. I do have one more question. I love your social media that you do, and your handle is _September_Monday.
Yeah.
And I want to know the symbolism and the meaning behind that.
Yeah, so it's actually an interesting story. When we first looked into adoption way back in like late 2018. A lot of the country requirements, as we just kind of looked at the full breadth, were that your youngest had to be 3. But at the time, Charlie was like barely 2. And so that handle was founded because it was going to be a Monday in September when Charlie turned 3. So we thought that would be when we could start our journey. We ended up, Armenia doesn't have that requirement, so we started earlier.
Wow.
But that's where it came from. And it's interesting because I kept thinking, okay, God, like this was a random handle. It doesn't mean anything now. What are you going to do with it? Like, is it going to be symbolic of something someday? And, you know, we thought when we brought Ember home, her birthday is in September. So I thought, oh, maybe she was born on a Monday. She wasn't. That wasn't it. So I don't know, but that's where it came from. We are in September now, and we are waiting for a very important phone call. So I don't know. Who knows?
And it might happen on Monday.
Could be.
Wouldn't
That
that
would
be
be
special if it did?
Pretty incredible.
We learn in the adoption space to expect miracles.
Yes.
And so why not?
That's right.
Just in closing, I want to tell you, so I have Nash, who's my son who has Down syndrome, born into our family, and then we adopted Cooper. I have so much respect and admiration for families that choose to adopt a child with Down syndrome, and that is their entry point into the disability and Down syndrome community. Knowing what I know now, I could go back to my 20-something-year-old self and say, you should 100% adopt a child with Down syndrome, but I know that my 20-something-year-old self would probably not be as receptive or mature to that counsel. And so I just have so much respect and admiration for you and Adam for your maturity and your just your understanding and your desire to be able to really lean into those feelings that you feel on your heart. And so you're a tremendous example for all of us, and you've been an amazing guest.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, Brady. I have enjoyed it so much. And thank you for all that you're doing for children, not only in Armenia, but all over the world. That's advocacy that we need more of. So truly, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Conquering Your Clownfish. If you liked what we discussed on the podcast today and want to continue the conversation, please visit us at conqueringyourclownfish.com. And please don't forget to subscribe.